Welcome to Murder by Nature, where we discuss true crime, mysterious disappearances, and unsolved cases. I am your host, Jasmine Hernandez. How are you guys all doing today? I am a little sick. Or allergies. I don't really know. So I may sound a little nasally as we go through this episode. Just don't mind to it. It has been a crazy week, especially starting this new schedule. I'm going to end up releasing these on Mondays around like 8:30 because I always feel like when I see notifications on my screen of podcasts that I want to kind of listen to or watch on YouTube or anything, they always come out right in the middle of the day. And I work from home, but I'm working and I can never get to them, and then I forget about them. And then I'm 3 weeks behind. So I'm hoping with releasing these more in the evening time after dinner, after sports for people, that it gives them time to actually sit there and listen to it as they're kind of just decompressing and relaxing from that evening and getting ready to go to bed. Or listening to it on Tuesday morning if you're on the East Coast and not on the West Coast like I am. So we're going to see how this works. If you guys aren't liking the new schedule, if you're not liking the time and you want it earlier in the day, please go to TikTok or Instagram and just comment below or send me a message. My inbox is always open for y'all to come talk to me. So put it there and we can kind of readjust and see how to work this. I'm trying to get it to where it fits for everybody and kind of working through this little hiccup that I'm calling it. So we'll see how that goes. As for me, it is also going into the busy season of my work. So I'm a little bit more busier during the weeks, and this weekend's been crazy. So, as most of you know, I am a mom and I have kids, and they are going back into sports, and we had tryouts and sign-ups and all of this fun stuff that we were doing this weekend, as well as my daughter starting gymnastics, so getting that going too, and just trying to get back into the swing of that. With birthday parties, Thanksgiving, all of that kind of passing by, it's nice to get back into this balance. But it's also the time that I start traveling a little bit more from work. So I need to make sure I'm spending some time getting these episodes pre-recorded for the weeks that I am not here. Granted, it's going to be far and few, but as you kind of go through, I'll always notate inside my recordings when they're being pre-recorded a week or so out. So you guys are aware of that, just because you never know. Never know. Well, I want to thank you guys for, one, being a part of this community. Really just staying with us as we go through this transitional phase. But with that long spiel, that long little minute, we are going to dive into our episode today. I am going to go over the references that I have found this last week, and we're going to get a lot of different stories coming from this first reference. So we'll get started. How I Caught My Killer, Season 1, Episode 2, thesun.com, abcnews.go.com, Cinematic, dailymail.co.uk, Facebook, fugitives.com, ajc.com, caselaw.findlaw.com, findagrave.com, truecasefiles.com, and websleeths.com. And with that, we're going to jump in. In 2010, a teenager suddenly disappeared in Clayton County, Georgia, without a trace, and of nowhere on where she might be. Candice Parchment was 15 years old, living in Clayton County, Georgia with her mother. She was an aspiring writer attending Forest Park High School with a bright smile and by all means a promising life ahead of her. She had a journal in which she used to write down her thoughts from the day that she experienced, and it was unknown to everyone during this moment that this very journal would be the key to the case. Candice was close with her mother, following their immigration from Jamaica to a new life in the United States, a better life. So it was very uncharacteristic for her to suddenly leave home on April 28, 2010 without a trace. Now, when Candice's mother couldn't get a hold of her daughter, despite trying multiple times over a period of 6 hours, she decided it was time to report her missing. But like some, unfortunately, the police did not take the disappearance seriously from the beginning. As days went on, Candice's mother started to receive text messages from Candice saying that she was in Tennessee, saying that she was okay, saying not to worry. But something felt off about these messages. Friends and family said that if you knew Candice, you would know that she didn't send these messages. However, Her mother knew that she wouldn't just up and run away and leave. That wasn't her. She was someone who was reliable, and she was definitely not a runaway. The police didn't have any answers to give her mother, who claimed that the text messages were not from her and that there's no way she could be in Tennessee, but no one believed her. As days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, the police finally got a lead. On November 24th, 2010, a body was found. The body was found a few hundred yards from Candice's place, but to identify the body, the police needed hard evidence. When officers arrived on the scene, they imagined that they would be walking up to a body, but instead they discovered skeleton remains. As police did not have much to go off of with identification of the body, they searched the whole area for any clues, and that's when they found a jacket with scale-like scabs on it. That's basically to describe it from what I was looking at, and an earring. The two artifacts were unique enough that they decided to search the internet for some leads. They went through their missing case files and they browsed through numerous profiles and images and walls and everything that they can get their hands on when they found a picture. The picture was of Candice wearing the same jacket. The detective who was leading the case was Ashley Melvin. See, now it was time for him to bring this to Candice's mother, the hard call to inform the mother of what they found. As the news of the body began to break out, her family and friends were already on high alert. And as soon as the call came in, devastation fell on them. Ashley promised Candice's mother that they would find out who did this and why. But like some cases, they had no leads. The crime scene was empty on what could have happened. There was nothing there. Detectives had to wait until the autopsy came back to determine the cause of death. Now, I'm going to pause right here. The best way to kind of describe what was going on in this situation was like a very wooded area. And when you walked into this wooded area, there was like overgrown bushes and trees. And then there was just this mattress. It is said that there was a group of hikers that were walking around the area when they saw the mattress and it looked really weird and out of place. And when they moved it, there was a hole with skeleton remains in it. You can listen to the 911 call on How I Caught My Killer. I would be very weary about that show. It was really hard to watch some stuff, but it does have that 911 call. And when the person that found the body calls, they say, "I think I found human remains." And they're like, "What?" And he's like, I think it's human. And that's when they came to the case. Now, Ashley Melvin, this is his first case where he found skeleton remains ever. He said that this is the first time he's ever seen it. And they weren't expecting that. And when you have a crime scene that's years old, it's very hard to gather information or to gather evidence. You just have to go by what's there. And when there's not much there, it's very hard to gather the story of what happened. Now, with nowhere to start and who to question, they patiently waited for the coroner's report. And when the report came in, they quickly informed the police that Candice was stabbed in the chest and the manner of death was homicide. As a rookie detective on his first homicide, this was terrifying to see the skeleton remains of a young girl, and Ashley was determined to find out who did it. As they started gathering more information on who Candice was and who she hung out with, they decided it was time to stop at her high school and start interviewing students who may have known what happened or who knew who Candice was. One of the first people of interest in the case was her best friend, Hamlet. I'm not going to say his first name. He is in this interview, but I'm going to keep it to just that. He was Candice's best friend and someone who they felt might have an idea of what happened to her or who may have done it. But according to him, the police were looking at the wrong person. He loved her dearly and would never imagine hurting his best friend. He said he would never harm her, and what they had was a bond that was so good that you couldn't do that. Now, he didn't know anything about her murder, and as the police continued to keep their eye on him, they decided to look through his phone to find clues. But as suspected, they didn't find anything. See, he didn't take much offense to this when the police saw him as a suspect because he wanted to find out the truth too. He knew this was a part of the run to find the real suspect in the case, and just as quickly as he became a suspect was just as fast as he was removed from that list. Now, in the interview that they have with him, he goes on to talk about how he couldn't believe that they were putting his attention to him, and that it was just shocking and devastating. That years went by, and when they finally came back and said that they found her body, it was just like this wave that hit him, and it emotionally affected him. He didn't know what to do with it. From what I was reading, Candice was a beautiful young woman, and their relationship was really unique. So I think to become a suspect and then to be removed was like, okay, look, I didn't do it. Now what happens? As word starts to spread around Candice's murder, there was rumors about Candice at the school. Some students said she ran away from a trucker, and some said that a serial killer killed her. Now, this struck a chord with police, because not even a few months after Candice went missing, a 17-year-old girl disappeared on October 16, 2010. Police felt like the case resembled some of the same signs from this murder to that murder. Now, with this case, though, there was something a little bit different. Monica was 17 years old at the time of her murder. She had been stabbed in the chest by a person named Armento. He was in jail for the crime, and the police started to notice the similarities between the two cases as they continued to dig deeper. Now, with this one, he's already in jail. He was caught. So Detective Ashley knew he had to act fast. He had to get there. Ashley requested that the area police arrange a meeting with them to discuss the case. Now, according to Ashley, Armento was someone who took pride in killing. He knew, like, hey, I did this. I'm going to tell you. So he wanted to act on that. He wanted basically for him to go there and him to tell them, I did this. This is my work. But he would tell the police that his first victim was Candice. That's what he wanted. Now, weeks after finding the body of Candice, Ashley was finally able to interview him. But unexpectedly, he said he'd never seen the girl. He didn't know who she was. He admitted to killing Monica, but he said he had done nothing to her. This devastated the detective, and there was no evidence to convict him of it. They had nothing. They had to take his word for it. Now, as Detective Ashley Melvin started to grow frustrated, he quickly had his eye on another suspect, Trey Jenkins. Now, Trey had sexually assaulted 2 young girls, and he somehow knew her. He knew Candice. He had communicated with her on one occasion. However, as the police continued to investigate Trey, they learned that they didn't have enough evidence to convict him either. Now, I will say on here, it's not sure of how he knew Candice. It's not sure if they were friends, how there was nothing on how they communicated, but they know that they knew each other and they know that they've spoken on numerous occasions. How that was, they don't know. So in the back of the mind of the police, they're thinking Trey sexually assaulted 2 girls. Could Candice have been one of these girls? Could he have done something to her on a different occasion? They just knew they had that. But unfortunately, police were able to locate Trey on the night that Candice disappeared. And he wasn't even in the area or had any time frame of being in that area close to the time that she disappeared. And he was quickly removed from the list. 16 months go by, and the police have no leads in Candice's case until her mother gave police the biggest lead to date. She discovered Candice's diary in October of 2011 while they were packing to move to a new home. As she read the diary, she made the startling discovery. She read the names of 2 teenage boys who had allegedly assaulted her daughter. Marsha Hickman and Jeremiah Robinson. On October 11, 2011, Candice's mother called Ashley Melvin. She was restless, and she rushed to the police station with Candice's diary. In her diary, they found that she had snuck out of her house one night to meet 2 boys. Over 3 months before her disappearance, she survived an attempted sexual assault on herself. On January 5th, 2010, she snuck out of her home to meet up with 2 boys at an abandoned house. As Candice entered the abandoned house, one of the boys hit her in the back of the head with a rake and choked her, while the other blocked the door to prevent her from escaping. One of the boys groped her while choking her and trying to put her down on a mattress. They were trying to unzip her pants and pull them off. See, Candace's mother returned home from work that day, and she wasn't home. She wasn't answering her phone after calling her repeatedly and repeatedly. Then on one call, she picked up the phone, and it sounded like someone was trying to wrestle the phone away from her. Her mother and her fiance went looking for Candace, stopping in front of a number of abandoned houses on their street. Now, while the attack was taking place, Candace's mother drove up to this abandoned house that her daughter was in. And when the boys saw the lights of the car, they let her go. As she ran away, they threatened to kill her if she told anyone what happened. Candace ran up to her mother's car and jumped in. She was in a panic, and she told her mother, "Somebody tried to rape me." But she managed to escape when they saw the car approaching the abandoned house. Despite her mom insisting that Candace went to the police, she didn't. She didn't want to. And sadly, more than 3 months later, she suddenly disappeared, with her body being found in November. As police reviewed the diary, they found that Jeremiah and Marche had called Candace to the secluded house, and she wrote about her horrible experience in this diary, but she didn't have the courage to tell other people. She didn't want them knowing that her two friends that she knew assaulted her. Now, as police were looking into the pair, they found that Marche was in jail for burglary already in Clayton County, and they decided it was time to pay him a little visit. Now, I'm going to pause right here. Before they went to this interview, Candace had her best friend, and they went to him and asked, "Do you know these people? Do you have an idea who they are? Do you have any information on them?" And when they said the names, his heart dropped. He knew them. He introduced them to her, and he couldn't put the pieces together. It is said that Marche would play music, and that's how they knew each other, and they would hang out together. And it kind of like, you can just see the devastation in his eyes as he's going through and saying this. Now, during the interviews, Marche said that he didn't harm Candace and that he had seen someone following her into the woods that night that she disappeared. Marche described a heavier set man, Hispanic, with blackish hair. Now, this did make police pause as they just interviewed another man in this case that fits this description. They knew Armand was already in jail for murder, and he was known to be close to this area. It was within the same 20-mile radius from where he killed Monica. But then the police questioned Jeremiah, and the minute they did, he confessed. He said Marche killed Candace. He called him crazy. He put all the blame on him. He stated that he had no involvement in the night of the abandoned house or the killing. Now, the police knew that there was more to this story, and they decided it was time to play a little game of cat and mouse. The police went to interview Marche for a second time, but this time, they made him believe that they found his DNA on her body. As soon as he heard this, he knew he was caught, and he confessed to killing Candace. Now, let's backtrack just a little bit. Now, after the attack happened, Candace didn't tell just her mother what happened. She also confessed to one of her close friends, Danny Jackson. She told him all about the incident. After hearing what happened, after hearing what those boys did to her, Danny approached Jeremiah and warned him to stay away from her. And he was mad. Now, Jeremiah went and told Marche that Candace was telling people about the rape. And you would think, oh my goodness, what do we do now? What do we do now? No. Marche told him not to worry. He'll handle it. The boys were scared that she was going to keep telling other people what happened that night, but Marche was going to take care of it. On April 28, 2010, it started as any other day. Candace's mom was off to work, and she decided to take a stroll around the neighborhood when she ran into Marche at the basketball courts. She was walking along the trail that led from his apartment complex to her subdivision. So the way you can see it is there's a bunch of apartments. There was a basketball court in this wooded area. And when you went through them, they led to where she lived. He said that he walked up beside her, put his arm around her neck, and started talking to her. And as he was talking to her, he slowly started squeezing, and she fell limp. He said he checked for her pulse to see if she was still alive, but there was none there. He then carried her into the wooded area and covered her with a mattress. Now, court records provided a startling account of what happened after she disappeared, and this raises more questions about Marche's alleged motive. Police believe that they were together at some point on a wooded trail behind the apartment complex at 428 Sylvia Drive in Forest Park, just 2 blocks from where she lived with her mother. An autopsy showed evidence that Candice had been stabbed, but Marche, a 6-foot, 250-pound teen, only admitted to strangling her. From the time that Candice disappeared, police records show that Hickman, which is Marche, or someone was possibly working with him, made an effort to cover his trail. Text messages were sent from her phone to her mother's phone within days of the disappearance, telling her that she left the state, telling her not to worry. Her mother says that he texted my phone around 3 o'clock the Wednesday she went missing and said, "I'm in Tennessee." And then Thursday night after she disappeared, I got another text saying, "I'm okay." Interviews with the police said that the affidavit was, basically it said that Hickman was dodgy, that he was telling investigators that he encountered her in the woods at the time that she disappeared in April of 2010. And then it's saying that he found her because he moved the mattress from the trail so he can ride his bike through. But both of these were just ploys to basically explain, hey, my DNA was here, but this is how it got here. But I didn't go to the police. And then he said that he had a pocket knife that he always had at the time, but he threw it away when questioned about possibly stabbing her. Now, police say Marche eventually told investigators that he kept tabs on Candice's body shortly after her death, periodically looking to make sure that she hadn't been found. He went back to the scene the next morning, and it says at this time he observed that her feet were hanging from underneath the mattress, so he tucked her feet back in. Investigators said that he even moved away from this area, but continued to come back and check on her body. After Thanksgiving of 2010, he went back to the scene of the murder and noticed the mattress and Candice's body was no longer there. And that's when he knew. He knew he was going to be caught. Marche Hickman's trial began April 8, 2013, and Jeremiah Robinson testified against him. The prosecution argued that Marche killed Candice to prevent her from reporting the January assault. Prosecutors cited his apology letter to her mother as a admission of his guilt. According to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, it's times that I think back and wish I can rewind time so this would never happen. I pray every night that you and everybody can forgive me. I just don't know what came over me at that time. Now, the jury took this as a guilty verdict. They knew this, you're admitting to what you did to this girl. And when they went to go deliberate, it took them 4 days. 4 days to come back. On April 26, 2013, the judge sentenced Marche Hickman, who was 21 at the time, to life in prison without the possibility of parole for malice murder, along with an additional 70 years for the other charges. She was convicted in her own words, Candice told the mother. This is where it's like, you're reading all of this stuff and you're seeing everything that these families are going through. And Candice's mother, after the verdict was read and everything, she told the journal team that it was like she was in that room with them. And you can see video of this everywhere. She's sitting there talking to them and she's just emotional and she's just telling them she was in that room. She convicted him. She did this. Hickman filed a motion for a new trial in May of 2013, but was denied in March of 2015. After filing an appeal the following month, the Georgia Supreme Court also denied his request in June of 2016. Hickman is currently serving his life sentence at Telfair State Prison in Helena, Georgia, and he will be turning 31 this year. Since Jeremiah had sexually assaulted her, he was sentenced to 10 years. The defense had claimed Jeremiah was likely the killer because he knew more about the crime, especially as he once talked about her being stabbed. Furthermore, Hickman, his attorney claimed that her client was cohered into confessing and that he was interrogated for extremely long hours. They were kind of placing the blame back and forth on each other. But yet, in the end, the evidence spoke for itself, leading him to being sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 20 years. Since this case has started, Jeremiah has been released from jail, and from my research, he has kept himself out of trouble, maintained a low profile, and his last known location was being Forest Park, Georgia. To me, this story is crazy because you have these two teenagers. They were teenagers. This was a little girl. And they do this awful thing. And then they continue to try and be around her for a few months. And then when she's talking to people, as she would, she's 15. She's a little girl. She's telling people what happened. She's dealing with that emotional trauma that she's going through. They decide to take it upon themselves and kill her. And for Jeremiah, to me, I don't think 10 years is long enough. I feel like he was there. I feel like he helped. I feel like he did something from kind of reading everything, how much information he knew. He immediately knew. But I think because he confessed first and then he went on record and basically was like, hey, I'll be on your guys' defense. I'll stand against him. I think that's why he got 10 years. And now he's just out living his life. And that just doesn't make sense to me. With how I caught my killer, that episode, everything, there's about 10 different episodes. Sorry, not 5. And I will be covering all of those cases. These are cases that I've never even known about. I was just kind of going through Hulu and I came across them. And it's something that I think should be out there, something that I think should be known. All of these families deserve so much justice for what was happening to their family. What they had to endure, what they're still enduring. That pain doesn't just go away. And for someone to just take it upon themselves to take a human life will never make sense to me. It just doesn't. So leave your comments. Go to TikTok, go to Instagram. Tell me what you think about this case. Tell me what cases you guys want to see. I have a lot of them in my little folder of upcoming cases. But then I just find a new one and I keep finding new ones that I'm just like, I need to get this word out. I will be covering the case and kind of just hit the news because they went to trial today. So I will be following that one very, very closely. But Alex Murgoff, I'm probably saying his last name wrong, but he's on trial and being prosecuted for murdering his wife and his son. It is said that they had a compound and he called 911 saying that they were shot, but there's evidence that is kind of leading that he's the one that did it. But there's a lot of evidence that they're saying is leading that he isn't the one that did it. It's going to be an interesting trial and something that I'm going to be watching heavily, but I will be making updates periodically on that new case on TikTok and then doing a full episode once the trial has kind of commenced and we know what happened. But I will say with that one, the power of social media, that is how he's getting convicted. The power of social media. We will be having an episode very soon coming out and it's going to be about a serial killer from not that long ago and how catfishing this serial killer is what ultimately led to him being caught. So stay tuned. We have a lot of really good cases coming out, a lot of cases that I've never heard, and I've been following true crime for a hot minute, but a lot of stuff that's going to be coming out on our podcast going into 2023 to really bring light to all of these cases that don't get enough attention, or cases that people don't know about, cases that don't get talked about. Not the big cases, not the profile cases, but cases that deserve a voice too. We'll be taking care of those going into this year. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Now, with this, that's going to bring us to the end of this episode. As always, thank you for listening to Murder by Nature. If you enjoyed our show, please rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any streaming platform that you're currently on. And be sure to come back not Saturday. Oh my goodness, I'm so used to saying Saturday. Monday for our new episode. Until then, I'm your host, Jasmine Hernandez. Don't forget to stay safe. Don't get murdered or murder people, you lovely humans. Good night.